right, now that we have this working Prime program, let's take our client and server code from the chat socket. Oh, I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter where we pull. We could pull it from, let's pull from the chat socket. So CP chat, socket chat. We don't really want to overwrite. Actually, you know what? Just to protect it, move main.cpp to prime.cpp. That way we won't lose it. And then we can copy all the stuff from the socket chat program here. All right. Okay. So we've got a client and a server. All right. So let's look at the client code. So the client code right now says waiting for server message, and there's a receive information. We're not really going to do that now. The client is going to, let's look at main.cpp. Oops, I meant prime.cpp. What we want to do is we want to kind of grab some of the code here, just this code right here, all right, that does the while true. I want to grab that code and we want to move it to our our client program. All right, and get rid of that and yank. Oops, yank. Okay, so we're basically continually saying, enter number, here's the number, is the number prime? Yes or no, okay? That's what our client program is going to do, okay? And then what we're gonna do is inside is prime, we're gonna hide the complexity of, actually, no, we're not going to do that first. First, let's just get it to work. Okay, so to get it to work, instead of saying is prime, what we're going to do is once we have the number, we're going to send the number to the server. Okay, and we'll write up here, client enter number, client sending number to server. And the way we're going to send the number is we don't need to do a get line. We're going to send the number. The number is a long, so we're going to do and number, and then we're going to do size of long. Okay. Now the expectation after we send the number is we're going to wait for a server response. Don't think we need a colon there. All right, waiting for and what the server response is going to be is we're going to do a receive of is prime, which is a Boolean. And we're going to set up is prime here. Assume that it's false. And then we're going to say is prime right here. Okay. And we'll say client is prime. Okay, so this is kind of an outline for how we want the client to work. We're going to get a number from the user. We're then going to send that number to the server. And then we're going to wait for the server to respond to us to whether this number is prime or not. So that's pretty cool, right? The important thing is that the work of determining whether something is prime or not is not going to happen in the client. It's going to happen over in the server. So all of that work happens in the server. Now, this is sort of version 1 of the program. We're going to do a version 2 where we make this client much less aware of how the mechanics of the interprocess communication happen. We're going to hide all of that. And that uses a technique, a design pattern called the remote procedure call. All right, cool. So let's put the client away now and take a look at the server. Actually, let's save this. Yeah, we'll save it. Okay, so let's look at the server. So the server is going to be running in a while true kind of situation, and it's going to be waiting for the client message for client's number. And we know that the number is going to be a long. We'll set it initially to 0. 0 long. Okay. And we're going to receive that number from the client. And that's a size of number. Okay. And then we're going to, we'll just say client sent number so that we know what the number is just for debugging purposes. Make sure that came across okay. And then we're going to determine if it's prime. So we're going to say bool is prime equals is prime number. So all the code for is prime number is going to go in here. And then we're going to send that back. All right, so I just want to make sure I got the send code right. And we'll say server. We're going to say server sending result of is prime to client. Okay. All right. And oops, put a semicolon there. And let's just make this a little bit bigger, shall we? That's kind of a long line. It's scrolling over. There we go. And we're going to change this to a send. And we're going to send is prime. And that has a size of bool. Okay. So that's pretty much what the server is going to do. The server is going to do that forever. We're never actually going to close the client socket or the server listener socket. We're just going to keep doing this over and over and over again. Now, to make this work, there's a little bit more work that we have to do. First of all, don't need these buffers. Get rid of that. That's a little bit extra code. And there's some setup we have to do before we enter this code. Even before we do the accept in any of this stuff, there's a little bit of setup right at the beginning of the program. And that setup is based on our main program, our prime.cpp. Like all the code that's in, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay. Pretty much this line here, create prime table, that's got to go into our main program. That's got to go into server right here. Okay, so when the server starts running, we're going to set up the prime table. All right, but that means that all the other code in prime needs to get into the server as well. So this code all the way up to, well, we're going to need those includes as well, but let's just grab all this first. All right, and we're going to put all that code right here. Okay. And we know all this works because we just tested it out without getting all that socket stuff involved. And by the way, that's just a really great way of approaching problem solving. The freshmen, as you remember from your own experience, the freshmen are going through that powerful and time consuming and somewhat stressful experience of working on some really hard homework problems every week. And I'm working on them one-on-one with this idea of, hey, you know, when you have a problem, you don't want to try to do everything at once. It's too overwhelming. Computer scientists are really good at taking problems and breaking them down into little parts and working on each part. So we already figured out one little part, right? Just getting a prime number table generated. So we know that works. So we can focus on the next part, which is connecting a client and server to make that all work. Okay, so there's some include files that we have to do as well. So I'm going to go back to Prime and grab, I just need to grab that time.h. That's the only one that's missing. And go back to the server and add time.h. Okay, so I think we're good with both the client and the server. So in theory, all of this should work. So let's see if we can get it to work. Let's do a make and see what happens. Oops. Okay, that's fair enough. It doesn't like me using is prime multiple times. We'll just call it prime here. And change this is prime to prime. And I think, and I changed it in a couple places, but that's fine. That's all good. We just had a name conflict where the variable is prime, which is a Boolean, and the method is prime. They're the same name, and C++ was not happy with me. All right, sir. Let's see. Client is not happy. Let's look at the client code. Oh, looks like I might have too many. Looks like I have too many whiles. All right, I think that takes care of the problem. We don't need this buffer. That was useful in the chat program, but we don't really need it here. Okay. All right, so now we need a client window and a server window. So what I'm gonna do is we'll use this as our server window. I don't really like that color. It's hard for you to see that, so I'm gonna do a new tab. We'll go with grass. There we go. All right, so font size is about the same. All right, let me get into my machine and go to CSC314, lectures, and socket prime, or what do I call this, PrimeServer? PrimeServer. Okay, so we'll run the server over here. So the first thing that's going to happen when we run the server is we're going to generate those prime numbers. So that's going to take a moment, right? We figured out it would take about 19 seconds or so. So we just have to wait till the line that says how long it took to generate those numbers appears. And then the server is going to say, hey, I'm waiting for the client. Okay, so it took 18 seconds, and now the server says I'm waiting for the client to connect. All right, so over here on the client side, we'll run the client. And it says the client and the server have established communication, enter a number. Okay, so let's try 9. It said sending number to server, and then waiting for server response, and the number is prime, 0. Actually, I'm not really happy with that. Yeah, I don't like that. There should be some endls there, but whatever. Let's try another number that we definitely know is prime, 57, okay? Uh-oh. 57. Let's try 7. Uh-oh. Something's not right here. It thinks that nothing is prime. How about 3? Oh yeah, no matter what we send in, it thinks it is prime. All right, so let's see what's going on here. Got definitely a little bug. It was working before. So, all right. I am actually a little confused. Maybe you see the problem, but I certainly don't. Okay. All right. So it's like is prime is failing for some reason. Why would it be failing? Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, I will have to say I am a little bit puzzled. I mean, it worked for the other program, so why isn't it working for this program? That table's there. Yeah. Okay. Okie dokie. Where's my main program that creates the prime table? Maybe I'll just do something that's a little interesting, which is just before this is done. Let's do a for int I equals 0. I is less than, I don't know, 100, I plus plus, and we're going to, we're just going to print out the table entries of the first. So we'll print out the value of I and then we'll print out the value of is prime table I, and then we'll do that, finish that like that. And oops, let's do no endl there so we can kind of cram it all together, and then we'll do a cout endl. And while we're at it, since we're missing some endls on the client, we'll just add those here so it looks nicer. And here. Okay. All right. So let's make sure that neither of those are running. Do a make. And we'll run the server over here. I'm dying to know if the table has the correct entries in it. Okay, we got to wait 18 seconds. And then we should get a dump of the first 100 numbers. So we should see some values in the isPrime table having the value of 1. Otherwise, something got screwed up. And we do, right? There's a 7, which has the value of 1. Okay, so let's run our client, put in the value of 7. Huh. isPrime returns 0. Interesting. The client sent 7. Oh, sending result of 1 to the client, and then waiting for client number. So, interesting. And then it thinks the client is sending it more information. That's a little weird. Okay, so let's just take a look at what the client's doing here. Oh, I'm sending instead of receiving here. So, okay. That looks better. All right, so I had a little error there. Let's make sure I got the server right as well. Oh, silly. Okay, we're going to receive and then send. Okay, the server looks like it's okay. Okay. All right, let's try running this again. There's my server. Let that server run. It's good to do a little bit of debugging, right? The thing that's interesting is my first go-to was like, oh, that PrimeServer prime number process is broken, but it's code that we already vetted, so it couldn't have been broken. It was had to have something to do with the client server communication, but I was just baffled as to what it was. All right, maybe some of you saw that and were shouting at me in the video, Bob, come on, man. Don't you see you're sending twice from this client? Yeah, I didn't see that. Okay, let's send a 7. 7 is prime. How about 57? 57 is not prime. How about 63? 64? 67? 67 is prime. Perfect. Okay. So it looks to me like if I try 5, if I try 13, it looks to me like it's working okay. So let's go over here and look at our server. And we've got lots of information. All seems to be processing just happy, perfect, and lovely. So I think we're good for part 1.